Arel is a boy from a family gifted in both magic and swordsmanship, but he is labeled as classless. However, Arel believes he can endure, and soon discovers that he is the strongest mage in the world, possessing an extraordinary power that will amaze everyone. The story begins in a quiet and cozy village, where in one of the houses, a family is eagerly awaiting to find out which class their son will be blessed with. Even though he himself doesn't seem as excited as the others, his little sister is so happy that she's sure her brother Arel will get the most powerful class. The mother comments that the boy will then become very popular among the girls, but the little girl, in a daze, responds that Arel is too young to be thinking about such things. The father points out that he was surrounded by kittens when he was his age, but none of that seemed to impress his son, who stayed away from the conversation. Although this issue of being graced with a class was also on his mind. In this world, God blesses every human being with a class when he reaches the age of 10. Then the skills necessary to perform their role are passed on to that person, which can range from a powerful wizard to a simple baker. After the family gathering, the moment finally arrives when the blessing ritual begins, and one of the community's religious figures takes the lead in the process in the city temple, in front of a statue of a goddess. Soon the first child is called to the stage. Then the religious man places the scepter on the boy's forehead and feels the power of the flames in him, as well as the smell of iron and hammer, and thus the boy becomes a blacksmith. As time passed and the children presented themselves to receive their classes, Ariel's sister took pride in the bloodline to which they belonged, which would certainly influence the blessing and make her brother one of the powerful class. When Arel is called, everyone present is eager to know the future of the village's most famous couple, known as representatives of very advanced classes, the Sword Princess Farah and the Archmage Leon. On stage, the religious man asks Arel to close his eyes so he can feel the goddess's blessing. However, the boy feels absolutely nothing, as does the person responsible for the ritual. The public begins to become anxious in the face of this lack of response. So after analyzing this rare case, the religious man comes to the conclusion that Arel is a classless child. The sister is outraged and refuses to believe this is the truth, just as the parents are very frustrated. After this event, Arel is back at home, training in the backyard with a sword and being comforted by his parents that since they will work after they retire, then the boy does not need to worry about getting a job. Arel insists that he doesn't want to be a burden to his parents. Then, the little sister, pretending to be the older sister, arrives to say that she will help the guy as she always did. Tired of this talk, where he always seems like the poor guy, Arel gathers the family together to make one thing very clear. He doesn't care about this whole classless thing. After all, he studied fencing with his mother since he was little, and even if he didn't gain any classes, he can still wield a sword and his hard work will pay off someday. The mother is moved by the boy's maturity at such a young age, and his father is confident that Arel can turn fate in his favor when he grows up. Just like the little girl always knew her big brother was the best, tired of being treated this way, Arel leaves to continue his practice at the training ground. Arriving there, two boys simulated a duel where both demonstrated impressive sword technique. According to them, having a class is amazing because they could feel the strength flowing from within their bodies. When Arel shows up, the duo recognizes him as being out of ritual class and asks what he's doing there. Arel explains that he just came to train like anyone else. Then one of the boys tells the advantage that they, as swordshins, don't need to train and just come to the training ground to check their skills. To demonstrate what he's talking about, the boy invites his partner to start the duel again. Then the duo once again displays that strength that Arel never had and never will. With each blow they struck, the heavy sound of air along with the collision of swords suggested that they were two powerful 27-year-old barbarians from Gladiando. Watching the fight, Arel ponders that the first technique a swordsman learns is basic fencing, which in itself is enough to make these two boys quite capable fighters. However, the observer didn't want to just watch, so he called any of the boys to train with him. The cockier of the two gives a mocking laugh and points out that the intruder doesn't stand a chance, but he's sure he'll give in, angry at the guy's certainty. The challenged person first asks if the challenger has divine protection, even if he is classless, which Arel confirms without much enthusiasm. Divine protection is another blessing granted by the goddess, but unlike classes, absolutely everyone has the right to receive this gift as soon as they are born. This protection is like an invisible web that wraps around the body and absorbs damage, but of course if you take too much of a hit, you'll end up feeling the pain. This way the cocky guy can fight without fear of taking his rival to the grave. However, Arel asks that the opponent also be prepared to burn his tongue. This provocation makes the brat even angrier, and this anger makes him move forward without the dispute even formally beginning. Arel thinks quickly and not only blocks the blow, but also spins his sword to open his opponent's guard, leaving the boy completely furious. Driven by the force of hatred, the suspect attempts another sword strike but is again stopped by his opponent's block. Next, the fight is shown to be completely controlled by Arel, and since he doesn't want to let this go, Marenta even calls his colleague to join his rival, a request that he promptly fulfills. Arel escapes a cowardly attack from behind, but he doesn't complain as he loves challenges, and having two opponents of the same age makes this training very beneficial since he was always being scolded by his mother during training at home. At this point, Moretto begins to complain that his partner didn't attack correctly, making Arel wonder if these classy people can't learn to work as a team. Because of the anarchic way they fight, they might even be easy prey. Convinced of this, Arel advances and knocks Bettina out of the duo with a blow to the chin. Now all that's left is the alpha of the duo, the final boss, who threatens his opponent with words. But when it was time to really show it, he tripped over his own companion and was left completely exposed to a blow to the back of the neck, which was the flat part of the blade, without using the cutting part. Otherwise, the worst would happen. As if the shame of having lost in those conditions wasn't enough, the duo still grumbles that Aro took them, and since they didn't accept defeat, the three agree to a rematch. However, another boy arrives at the training camp and tells the losers to stop this nonsense. After all, on a real battlefield, no enemy will care about the crying of these two clowns. The cocky one of the duo immediately insults the guy, but his colleague tells him to calm down, seeing as this redhead is a tough guy. That said, the redhead approaches Arel and recognizes him as the son of Farah, the princess of the sword, since the skill he has in fencing could only have been inherited by that warrior. Either way, he tells this victory not to go to the boy's head. So challenge him to a duel to show this classless man what a true swordsman is capable of. Bettina tells Morento that this redhead has some relationship with the head of the guard, and he himself confirms that Captain Evans is his father. Hearing that name, Arel remembers that Evans is the guy who once went to his house to call his mother to hunt demons. However, he looks nothing like his son, as the adopted son had a much more rigid and suffering appearance. Revo is angry at having his father mentioned and makes it clear that the captain is not only a master of the sword, but also a leader respected by all. Still, the son doesn't understand how Ariel's mother can be considered the #1 Zin sword in the village. Unconvinced, he asks if Arel agrees with this, and he confirms that his mother is literally the most powerful person in the village. Redhead then remembers that children inherit their parents' talent, and that's why he's going to beat up this brat, and prove that his family is much stronger than his. Furthermore, he had already been using the sword for over a year and had already learned intermediate techniques, so he would definitely defeat this brat. Therefore, as he has shown from the beginning, the area is not one to shy away from a fight, so the two immediately begin a dispute. This fight clearly demonstrates that it is a level above the previous one. This doesn't just impress the two previous rivals, but also the current challenger, who, although he admits that this fight is more balanced than he imagined, has a card up his sleeve for the crucial moment. In turn, Arel analyzes that the anger that the opponent is feeling is making him strike in a more sloppy way, which can be a disadvantage. Taking advantage of this, Arel quickly crouches after defending a sphere strike or a thrust strike, with the opponent's guard open. However, the redhead responds quickly with his twin blade slash skill. On reflex, Arel defends himself from the first, but the second cut hits his divine protection. The injured boy smothers the injured boy with his hand, unable to understand how his rival managed to land 2 blows at once, while the redhead takes advantage, saying that someone without class could never defend against such a technique. Either way, he recognizes that the kid has balls to accept this challenge. Days later, Arel is woken up by the most annoying alarm clock on the face of the earth, which in this case is his sister. He accidentally headbutted the poor girl as he stood up, which ended up being an unintentional act of revenge. During breakfast, she asks her little brother to stop working out so hard, as one day she will create a world where the poor guy can live comfortably. Hearing this, Arel gives a hearty laugh and says goodbye to her family to go to training. With his departure, his sister expresses concern that Arel is staying late, training every day after coming home exhausted from the beating he took. However, to calm the child's mind, Farah takes the little girl to a chest, where several swords that were broken by Arel during her training were stored. In other words, the guy knows how to handle himself. Even calmer, the boy's sister promises to make the world a better place for him. Meanwhile, Arel focuses on her daily training and shows that she has learned the double blade attack, as she only let herself be hit so she could assimilate this technique. Speaking of which, a blow appears from Tokaya to ambush the human, but Arel finishes off the creature with this very ability. However, a deep, sinister roar echoes from within the forest and indicates that another, much more serious challenge lurks among the trees. Fearing that the village would be attacked, Arel runs to alert the guard. However, a child's desperate cry makes him run into the woods. When he reached the injured person, it was none other than Redhead, who challenged him days ago. And on the other side was a hobby goblin, a type of creature that never appears around these parts. Besides him, larger goblins were dead, near the Redhead's training platform, which indicates that he killed the monsters while training. Given the enemy's size, Arel believes he needs to focus more on his base than on his wrist movement, as timing will be crucial to hitting this giant. With this strategy in mind, Arel adjusts her footwork and delivers the twin blade strike at just the right time. That's how it will be at RB Coblin. After that, seeing that the redhead's holy water broke on the ground, the boy gives his own to the injured man to regenerate his divine protection. When drinking the water, the redhead gets better quickly, just to question how without the classic yellowish twin blades. Then, the boy calmly explains that he had to train a lot to develop such a complex technique. Furthermore, he notes that he noticed how Red used this move several times in their fight, and was beaten in that way that Arel was able to learn later. In fact, he wants a rematch, which his rival accepts because he was saved, since that way the two don't waste time and go to the exchange right there. Already leaving, the two use the twin blade strike at the same time, but Arel's power had one more cut. Then, when 2 cuts from each fighter absorbed each other by colliding, The latter crossed the field and hit the target squarely. The redhead remembers that the name of the skill is Twin Blades and not Trembling. So Arel explains that there is no need to get caught up in these limiting details, as the important thing is to model a certain technique to better serve in moments of battle. The redhead doesn't accept any lesson from someone without class, so he raises his sword once more, keeping in mind that he learned fencing from his father, Captain Ivans. So he can't lose under any circumstances, especially to a kid who hasn't even received a class from the goddess. Be that as it may, one thing is certain: you need to be careful against this opponent. However, even though he promised to be careful of the third cut from the twin blade, Redhead falls under the same attack and loses the duel. He asks if Arel went easy on him in the last fight, since he's visibly much faster than before. However, Arel explains that it was thanks to his rival that he saw his limitations and evolved to overcome the weaknesses that led to his last defeat. Days later, during an evening tea, he will tell the family that Evan's son went to Brazia today, a place called the City of Swords, where Faraja was part of the local guild before getting married. Arel feels like going to a place like this, but wonders how far someone without class could go. Wherever it is, he'd like to find out. This will only be possible if he tries. This concludes today's episode of this anime. Wait for us in the upcoming episodes. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive all that is new. An ordinary office worker, suddenly transported to a world of swords and sorcery, but Tearu has a rare skill, the power to find treasures no one else can. Will it lead him to riches? Or the start of the most dangerous adventure of his life? Our story begins with a young man named Takeru, who tells us that his life is utterly boring and routine. It's the same work, the same return home, and while this ordinary life is supposed to be comfortable, a part of him longs for something different. Then, suddenly, something strange happens to him. He finds himself sitting at a table across from a person who introduces himself as the supervisor of the solar system, a being closer to an alien. Using his magic, this being conjures a planet called Marius and explains that no matter how much he tinkers with this planet, things never go as planned and civilizations repeatedly collapse. Therefore, he must now personally intervene to save the planet, and he has chosen Tearu to make that change. Takeru is baffled and asks how this is possible. The young man informs him that he is already dead and will be sent to the planet Marius to live again. He assures Takeru that he won't send him empty-handed and will provide him with gifts, such as the ability to use magic. Takeru becomes very excited and requests two things: to befriend a cute girl and to enhance his exploration skills. The young man agrees and also adds a skill for gathering and selling materials for profit, a practical inventory bag to store everything he collects, and all the languages of the world. Takeru's body begins to fade, and we see him in another world, asleep under a tree. He wakes up, looks around, and tries to find a place to live. As he walks through the forest, he sees a city in the distance and decides to head there. He quickly realizes that he has no money, and no one will allow him to stay or eat without it. He remembers the young man's words about gathering and selling materials to earn money. He tries to activate his exploration magic, but nothing happens. Takeru gets frustrated, but then he suspects he might be using the wrong language. When he pronounces the words for exploration magic correctly, the spell works, marking the locations of materials that can be gathered and sold for profit. He collects many flowers and herbs, though most are of a low rank. Then, he picks up a stone and discovers that it is ant waste and of a very high rank. He deduces that tradable resources appear with different symbols, and he can track them with his exploration magic. He collects all the resources in his bag and heads to the village. Upon arriving at the gates, he meets the guard, Marlowe, who welcomes him. Tearu introduces himself and says he has only come to the village to sell some resources. Guard Marlowe opens the gate and tells him they don't have a specialized resource shop, but there is a general store he can visit. Tearu enters the village, finds the store, and goes inside. The store owner asks him what he wants. Tearu approaches him and asks, "Would you buy something like this, an ant waste stone?" The store owner is amazed that Tearu was able to find such a thing and offers him 5 silver coins for it. Tearu asks how much a night at the inn costs. The store owner tells him a night costs 500 ref, and 1 silver coin is worth 1,000 ref. Tearu quickly calculates its value in yen and is astonished that the stone is worth 50,000 yen. He agrees to the sale. The store owner asks if Tearu has any other resources, and Tearu presents his collection. The store owner is surprised by the quantity Tearu has gathered and offers him a job to collect mithril ore from the eastern mountain. He says he has a map of the mountain and will give him all the information if he agrees. He then offers to buy all the resources Tearu brought for 360,000 yen. The store owner warns him that the mountain has monsters that will surely hunt him, but he trusts and relies on Tearu. The scene shifts, and we see Tearu in his room at the inn. A worker enters and brings him water to wash himself and his feet. So he asked the maid about taking a bath. She replied that there was no bath here and that he had to simply endure it. Shocked, Takeru froze at her words. But then she mentioned she had heard that some mages in distant lands could clean themselves with magic, though none lived in Turmi. Takeru took the water bowl from her, handed over the payment, and after she left, he used his own cleanse magic. To his delight, the spell worked perfectly, washing away the dirt from his body. He felt refreshed. almost reborn. The next day, he headed into the forest to search for valuable resources. First, he found mushrooms and gathered plenty of them. As he wandered deeper, he stumbled upon a skeleton. Fear struck him, but he quickly cast his skill to check the skeleton's status. It once belonged to Baleria Fiend, a soldier of the Baleheim Legion. Nearby, Tearu spotted a small pendant. When he picked it up, he realized it was a family keepsake, crafted by the man's mother. On it was a heartfelt message from his sister, thanking him for caring for their father's illness and wishing for his safe return home. Touched, Tearu buried the remains with respect. That night, he rested in the forest, drawing a magic circle around him as a protective barrier from monsters. He set a pot over the fire, adding spices from his old world and wild herbs he had gathered. Finally, he threw in some meat. When the stew was ready, the flavor amazed him. The juices of the meat blended perfectly with the broth. Soon we learn that this forest is the Whitewood Forest, also known as the Gate of Ancient Dragons, a dangerous place teeming with beasts. An old man had once warned him about this very location. Tearu used light magic to brighten his path as he collected plants, reminding himself, for every action there is a reaction. It's not just monsters here, but countless unseen dangers. Eventually, he noticed his body reeked again and cast cleanse magic once more. As he tried to leave, he suddenly fell into a pit. Reacting quickly, he used flight magic to escape. Inside the pit, however, he discovered valuable raw silver ore and collected as much as he could. Then the ground shook. An earthquake. Determined, he pressed forward and found mithril ore, an extremely rare and magical metal. Overjoyed, Tearu knew its worth, though it was small in size. Suddenly, another quake rumbled. Holding himself steady, he pushed on until he came across a river. The water left him speechless. It was so pure, unlike anything he had ever seen. To him, this was his greatest discovery yet. He wondered if this river had once been blessed, or cursed, by an ancient dragon that lived here long ago. And then, a thunderous voice echoed, "Who dares disturb my slumber?" Startled, Tearu admitted he only wished to take some water with him. He tried to fill his flask carefully, not wanting to waste a drop. But before he could explain further, the dragon rose from the lake itself, its massive form breaking the silence of the ancient forest. The dragon emerged, annoyed at Tearu, scolding him for never listening to a word he said. Tearu quickly bowed his head, apologizing for entering the dragon's home without permission. "I've bowed to countless people ever since I started working, but I never thought I'd have to bow before a dragon." The dragon laughed mockingly. "You're a man of unshakable spirit." Then he asked for his name. When Tearu introduced himself as a human, the dragon was shocked. "A human? Impossible. That overwhelming magic power pouring from you, it rivals my own." The dragon revealed his name, Voldios. He then made a request. "I want your power. Perhaps your pure mana can revive my child. The stagnant, polluted mana here prevents the egg from hatching. I won't ask for free. In return, I'll give you this." From the depths of the lake, Voldios produced a magical ore, so rare that Tearu's eyes widened in awe. Taking the dragon's egg in his hands, Tearu channeled his magic into it, creating a radiant light. Speaking to himself, he thought, "Since it's an egg, I need to keep it warm." Using heat magic, something strange happened. The dragon's eyes gleamed with joy. "Yes! It worked! You're the one who made this possible." Tearu then confessed, "I've only just arrived in this world. I want to see more of it." At that moment, a celestial being appeared before him. "You reckless fool. When dragons appear, people either faint or flee for their lives, but you've broken the rules. I've been shaping this world for hundreds of thousands of years, and in an instant, you've spread ripples everywhere. It irritates me, that ridiculous blessing you received. I'll weaken it a little. You wished for a charming companion, now deal with it." Tearu suddenly awoke from what felt like a dream. Just as the egg hatched, the newborn dragon leapt happily into Tearu's arms. Voldios smiled. "Tearu, give my child a name. He already has a true name, but I want you to grant him a nickname." After thinking hard, Tearu finally said, "Black, short, simple, and it suits him perfectly." Voldios nodded proudly. "A fine name. It will bring us the love of this vast world." The little dragon, Black, had officially joined Tearu, but Tearu hesitated. "He's just been born. I can't make him follow me into danger." Voldios looked him straight in the eyes. "I entrust him to you. Your power surpasses even mine. Take care of him." As Voldios departed, Tearu looked at the newborn by his side. "Black, from now on, you'll be with me on my journey to gather resources." The little dragon chirped with joy as Tearu cast a cleanse spell on him. And thus, today's episode comes to an end. What adventures await Tearu and Black on their journey? Stay tuned for the next episode of this amazing anime. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what comes next. Athanasia, a young princess born without magic, lost her mother and was left in the hands of a cruel father who despises her and seeks her death. Yet she holds a power far greater than any spell, the ability to see her tragic fate at the hands of her tyrant father. But will she find a way to escape this dark destiny, or is her future already sealed? Our story begins on a stormy night, with the birth of the little princess, whom her mother named Athanasia, meaning immortality. The little girl was born without any magical power, but when her mother kissed her, a magic circle appeared on her forehead. The mother then wept and passed away. The servants quickly gathered because of an order from His Majesty the Emperor to gather all the possessions of his wife Diana in the palace and burn them without a trace. He commanded them never to mention his newborn daughter's name in front of him, as he had never loved his wife. Several days pass. We see the servants in the palace with the young princess Athanasia, but they don't care for her much. The hungry little princess falls asleep and enters a magical dream world filled with magic circles. She approaches a magic crystal with a book inside. When she draws close and bites the crystal, it breaks and the magic book emerges. As she opens it, Athanasia hears her mother's voice telling her, "Take care of yourself. This is your future." She then sees a glimpse of her future as a young princess standing in the palace before her father and everyone, being put on trial for violating the decree and using a black magician to plot her father the emperor's assassination. Athanasia cries intensely, telling her father it didn't happen and that they are mistaken, as all she ever wanted was his love. She begs him to save her. Her father, the emperor, tells her that she is not his daughter and that he has never loved her, then leaves, ordering them to imprison her forever. We return to reality. Athanasia wakes up, crying hysterically, and thinks to herself, "This cannot be my future." The maid Lillian York immediately rushes in, holds her, and tries to calm her down. Princess Athanasia thinks to herself that Lillian is the only one who comforts her. She is a count's daughter and her mother's friend who gave up her life in a noble family to come to the palace as a maid to care for Athanasia. Without her, Athanasia would have been left to starve. She says to herself, "I'm just an infant princess, yet I know my future. Will anyone believe me?" All she knows now is that this is a world of magic, and every noble can use it. According to the legend, there is a tower that is the source of all magic, where a great magician resides, of whom it said that it would be easy for him to erase the empire. However, the one with even more amazing magical powers is the emperor, her father. But Athanasia sees him as an unjust emperor who banished and imprisoned her for a crime she didn't commit in her future dream. Athanasia tries to sleep again, but wakes up crying, seeing the same nightmare, and determined that this will never be her future. 3 years pass. We see the servants cleaning the palace. A new maid talks to an older one, saying she didn't expect the Ruby Palace to be so lively, as she'd heard the atmosphere there was always gloomy. She mentions she came to the palace to care for the princess, whom she heard was very lovely and is eager to meet her. We see Princess Athanasia in her room surrounded by many books. She looks out the window and asks the servants where they are going. A maid tells her that the flowers have bloomed beautifully, so they're going to tend to them. The princess gets excited and goes with them to help. She puts on working clothes and helps them with the decorations. While walking through the palace, she sees the new maid standing by one of the palace room doors, seemingly searching for something. Athanasia approaches and asks her what she's doing. The maid nervously says she is new and got lost. She looks at Athanasia and mistakes her for the gardener's daughter, not knowing she is Princess Athanasia. Athanasia asks her where she wants to go. The maid says she wants to go to a place full of shiny gold. Athanasia suggests the place with the golden wheat, golden bread, or sunflowers. The maid gets angry and tells her she means shiny, precious things. Athanasia informs her that valuable things are kept where people cannot see them and asks the maid to follow her. They arrive at the kitchen and stand outside. The maid asks Athanasia, "Are you mocking me, little girl? Does it make sense to keep valuables in the kitchen?" Athanasia explains that the Ruby Palace has been abandoned for years, so even if there were valuable items, they would have been taken out a long time ago. The maid then asks about the emperor. Athanasia tells her that His Majesty is too busy to care about them. They see the maid Hannah come out with a tray of sweets. When the new maid sees it, her eyes light up because the tray is decorated with real, genuine gemstones. She asks how Athanasia can get into the kitchen. Athanasia tells her to wait a moment, then goes to Maid Hannah and asks for a few sweets. Maid Hannah agrees. Just as she is about to give her the sweets, Maid Says approaches and tells Hannah that it is not permissible to give Princess Athanasia things without permission. Athanasia approaches Says and pleads with her. Maid Says is softened by her cuteness and gives her the entire tray of sweets, telling her not to tell Maid Lillian. Athanasia takes the sweets and goes with the new maid to the kitchen. When the maid sees the golden plates and spoons, her eyes gleam and she tries to steal them. She gathers many golden objects and even removes the gemstones from the serving dishes, filling her bag. However, Princess Athanasia notices this, takes the stolen items from her, and tells her that it all belongs to her. The maid takes a knife and approaches Athanasia, chasing her. The princess quickly tries to escape, then unties a rope of a chandelier, causing it to fall on the thief maid. Many servants rush towards the kitchen to check on the little princess. The guards take the thief away, and they leave. At night, Maid Lillian is brushing the little princess's hair, and tells her she was very worried about her today because of the thief maid. The princess tells her she's fine, gives her a flower, and thanks her. When it's bedtime, the princess sleeps in her bed, and Maid Lillian leaves the room. The princess speaks to herself, saying, "I'm glad you're safe, Lillian. That's thanks to the prophetic dream I had. If I hadn't done that today, Lillian would have caught the maid, and the thief would have stabbed her in the stomach, and Lillian would have died," she continues. My name is Athanasia, the magical princess who cannot use magic. But I have a secret. I can see my own future. As for my father, he never loved me, and I believe that this terrible dream is likely my destiny. But I do not intend to simply accept it. The scene shifts to His Majesty the Emperor's palace. A guard enters his room with a correspondence, informing him that, according to the knight's reports, a thief entered the Ruby Palace and attacked the little princess, but she managed to handle the matter herself, and the thief was captured. The Emperor gets angry and tells the guard he doesn't want to hear those details. The scene then moves to a strange man who wakes up and says, "Who is this who dares to deny the destiny of the Obelian Empire?" He then looks towards the palace. The scene shifts to the servants, perhaps at the royal palace, while Anastasia observes the events from afar. Due to the incident with the thief, the number of people in the kitchen has increased. It will now be very difficult to enter. She says to herself, "I won't let anything like this make me lose my real hope of collecting money." She loves gold or shiny things a lot. She had taken many golden dolls. At that moment, she enters and speaks to the servants, saying, "Good evening, I would like to eat some chocolate, please." All the girls are astonished and very happy that she is asking for something. Indeed, in just a few moments, they prepare the chocolate for her. Everyone was happy with her presence, as she is a beautiful and pleasant girl. The scene moves to Anastasia as she is eating the sweet treat next to the fountain and talking to herself about her dream boy, speculating she might meet him when she turns 19, or perhaps even sooner. "My luck will be wonderful," I think, she concludes. Then she remembers Lila and says, "I will take Lila with me, I will never leave her." At that moment, the chocolate drips onto her and stains her clothes, so she decides to wash herself in the fountain. Unfortunately, she nearly falls. She looks at her reflection in the water and remembers people's words when they told her that she looks very much like her mother, while her eyes resemble her father's. However, in terms of magical powers, she unfortunately possesses none. Regarding her eyes, they are very distinctive, but Anastasia says that in reality there is another girl named Jeanette who possesses the same eyes. Then she says, "This doesn't mean anything to me. I must escape as soon as I gather the money. When I collect the money, I will immediately run away." She had a pouch of dinars, coins, with her, and she decided to hide it in the forest, because the front security at the palace is very strict. She kept walking until she reached a certain place and wondered, it's not the Ruby Palace, so what is this place? She approached it more closely and entered, finding it completely empty. She remembers hearing some maids say that they were going to reinforce the security well and specifically search the princess's room. Therefore, she quickly ran under her bed, took her money, and went with it to the forest to hide it. However, after a few days, she returns once more to retrieve it. She searches for it left and right. At that moment, she finds that a squirrel has dug it out. She calls out, "Wait, little squirrel," but it doesn't heed her and runs away quickly. Here, she decides to look for a peanut to offer it so it will leave her jewelry and eat the peanut instead. The plan was successful. This means that there is now no safe place in the forest. She thinks and says, "I must find a safer place." Then she remembers that rented place and goes to it directly. She walks through its halls and finds no one. How can this towering place be shelterless and unknown to anyone, she wonders. Not only that, but she kept walking until she reached the main square, where she finds statues, perhaps made of pure gold. But here the great surprise happens. She turns around and finds two large people who say, "Since when was this small insect in our palace?" But one of the people deduces that her eyes are exactly the same as his own. She says to him, "Father," but we don't know now if he is her father or not. She then asks, "What exactly is the story? Is this my father? Is this the Demon King's palace? Did I come to the wrong place? Where exactly can I get out of here? I want to escape quickly." The man tries to remember and eventually recalls a girl who was indeed riding a horse. He remembers her and says, "You are Anastasia." Then he recalls what happened at that time when the servants were sitting and said, she was a good girl named Anastasia, which is what her mother named her. He says to her, "You have grown up a lot." Then he holds her cheeks and pinches them a few times. Then he tells his servant, "Bring tea immediately." She tries to run away because she doesn't want to drink tea with him, but he catches her quickly. Then her jewels fall onto the floor. After that, they enter the palace, and the sitting arrangement was very awkward. Anastasia says, "What a boring session. Does he want me to speak or say something? How long will I just sit here?" He speaks to her and says, "Are you always silent? Can't you speak? Come on, speak, Annie. I won't do anything to you." Finally, she speaks, and he hears her voice after a session of silence. He brings her cake and food, but she was very shy. His servant enters again, but he tells him to go outside. Then he talks to her about himself, revealing that he is the emperor who once caused chaos in that land, burned much, and misled people. But he is now no longer as he was before. He tells her, "Come on, drink the tea and eat the food, Annie." She was nervous and said, "What should I call him? What should I say to him? Should I call him father?" Then she decides to address him by that name. Claude looked at her but did not answer, causing Anastasia to become tense because she had addressed him specifically as father. She feared he would immediately banish her, thinking she should have just called him Your Majesty the Emperor like anyone else. The scene then shifts to the chief maid, Lillian, talking with the other girls, telling them they must fan out to search for the princess. Suddenly, the princess appears before them, running and crying. The chief maid embraces her and asks where she had been, as she was extremely worried. The royal guard then speaks to Lillian, explaining that the emperor had informed him that he would be summoning his daughter again. Anastasia cries, hating the idea and not wanting to see him again. He had been so cruel before, and she didn't know what he was trying to do. He had decided that he would personally supervise the princess from now on, but she resolved not to let him tempt her with sweets. Anastasia then goes with the chief maid, Lillian, to see her father, the emperor. The emperor welcomes her and tells her it's been a long time since they last met. She replies that he is right. She had the honor of meeting him last time, 5 years ago. The emperor is surprised that she remembers that. Before he can finish speaking, Anastasia feels so nervous she wants to throw up. Her father is the emperor of the Obalian Empire, and everyone calls him a great man, but she knows he is cruel and greatly merciful, sarcastically. The emperor then speaks, saying that he was unable to care for her due to being busy with government affairs, and he entrusts her health and vitality to Lillian. Anastasia understands that he is lying. It's not that he couldn't care for her. If he had wanted to, her life would have been enjoyable. She just wants him to continue leaving her alone and let her return immediately. The emperor continues, informing Lillian that he heard everything about the incident at the Ruby Palace. From now on, he will personally oversee the princess, and she will receive treatment appropriate for a princess. We move to the maid staff, where Hannah tells her friend Shez that she never imagined the king would come to the Ruby Palace, and they are now certain that the princess's life will be filled with happiness. We then see the emperor sitting with the princess at a garden table for breakfast. The princess is still nervous and thinks to herself that she was supposed to avoid her father and live quietly, as her future disaster is caused by meeting him. As long as she never meets him, she can change her future. Yet this is extremely frustrating. The maids place many sweets on the table. The princess is amazed and thinks this is indeed appropriate princess treatment. She thinks to herself that her father was very cold to her before, and she doesn't know what he is trying to do with her. Could it be poisoned? She resolves not to let this cake tempt her. The emperor asks her why she hasn't eaten, saying he feels she suspects the sweets are poisoned. The princess is shocked that he might be able to read her thoughts. She tells him she likes cake, but Lillian warned her not to eat too many sweets or her teeth would rot. The emperor is surprised since she ate some yesterday. However, she can't hold back any longer. She takes a bite of the cake and finds it incredibly delicious. Nothing has ever tasted this good. She can't believe she dropped her guard because of a small cake like this. She then decides to eat the whole cake, as it would be wasteful to leave any piece of it. At that moment, the servants and the emperor's guard watch her from afar, relieved that she seems to be relaxing a little. The emperor asks his daughter to join him for a tea session every day. And so, the life of Anastasia, began, where she saw her father every day, even though she didn't know why he suddenly started playing the role of a happy family with her. This made her very tense, but every now and then, something nice would happen. The princess always tries to perfect things, but this only increases her tension. She tries to learn many things for her father, and every time she makes a mistake, she believes it's over for her. But for some reason, it seems her father has no intention of criticizing her. Perhaps he regrets what happened and is trying to be kind to her, and she believes she is not as afraid of her father as she was before. Anastasia sleeps, and in the morning she gets ready to go for a stroll in the imperial grounds as she heard there were flowers by the lake. She goes out to her father happily, strolling in the garden and picking many flowers. She runs and plays in the garden with joy. Her father reaches her and tells her he will show her the way and take her in a boat. Lillian informs him that the princess is uncomfortable with water, but the princess reassures Lillian and asks her not to worry, saying she must do what her father asks of her. The emperor says he will stay with her, so why is she worried? Or does she hate the idea? The princess replies that she didn't mean that at all. She wants to go with him anywhere. Indeed, the princess gets into the boat with her father alone. The princess is very scared when they are by themselves. He stares at her all the time, and she doesn't know what she should say. She is so tense that she can barely breathe. The emperor asks what she is thinking. She becomes more nervous and tells him that the weather is beautiful, the lake is beautiful, and then tells him his hair is very bright and beautiful, admitting that his hair is indeed beautiful. Every time she sees something golden, she thinks of pure gold. The emperor understands that she loves shiny things very much and tells her that she has her jewels and the day will come for her to take them. The princess says that time is passing slowly and the wind carries the scent of flowers, which is a very pleasant feeling. Thinking about it now, she doesn't know how they are moving. They aren't rowing anything, yet the boat is moving. She believes this might be because of her father's magic. She looks at his clear blue eyes, like a blue sapphire. She wonders to herself if her father would have loved her if she could use magic. Then the princess sees a blue lotus flower and is captivated by its beauty and sweet fragrance. We see Anastasia, greatly captivated by the look of the flowers. She wants to touch and take the blue lotus, but she falls into the water. Something strong grips her leg. She calls for her father's help, but he does nothing for her. She then remembers what she dreamt, that because she broke the rules and used dark magic, she would spend the rest of her life in prison. She says, "This was supposed to be my fate always. Despite that, I held on to a little hope. I wished that he would accept me as his daughter." Finally, her father comes and saves her. Afterward, Athi wakes up with Lillian, Lily, by her side to check on her. When Athi realizes her father was the one who saved her, he uses his magic to dry her off. She is very happy that her father is doing all this for her. The emperor then asks Felix to teach her to swim tomorrow, adding, "It won't be a long story if my daughter drowns." They return to the Ruby Palace, and Athie is overwhelmed by the shock and a cold that has left her bedridden. But she keeps thinking about what happened that day. Lillian tells her that the flower is the dream lotus, which creates an illusion to lure living creatures. Its sole purpose is decoration. As long as there aren't many of them, they aren't dangerous. However, if you don't possess magical powers, you will be attracted by its allure. Athie tells her the problem is that she is very weak, but she doesn't want to drink any more of the medicine because it's too bitter. Lillian tells her she must take it or she won't recover. At night, we see Athie's father by the lake, and then the girl appears, saying to him, "You came to see me?" He tells her that emotions like this were forgotten long ago, but it seems he doesn't hate that girl. Many hands surround Athie's father. We then see Felix very angry and wanting to help the king, saying, "May a shining light illuminate your path someday." Athie's father dismisses him. Afterward, we see Cess rush into Athie's room, saying that many maids have arrived to serve her. Athie is astonished when she sees them. Then Felix arrives, telling her, "I have been assigned to be your guard knight. I look forward to serving you." This concludes today's episode of this anime. Wait for us in the upcoming episodes. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive all that is new.